Hey, welcome to Monfre and Tell the Truth, where we shine a bright light into the myth and the mirth and the mystery of marketing and sales. And today we're going to play Ask Me Anything. And this is a thing Jason and I, we're going to ask each other a tough question. We don't know what the questions are. We haven't colluded. It's collusion. We haven't done that. And so we're going to play Ask Me Anything. How does that sound, Jason?
It sounds good. And I've got a great question, I think, lined up for you.
I'm a little
It's
nervous.
scenario based, though, with me. So you're going to have to come with me on this little journey.
I shall.
So, question is, imagine you're a new CMO. You've just stepped into a situation that's clearly a turnaround. The website isn't generating any leads. There's some infighting amongst the senior leadership. Uh, there's some customer churn. There's a lot to fix. So the question is, where do you start? How do you prioritize that situation?
How has this client been around for a while? The company been around for a while, and they're not hitting their demand generation goals.
Yeah, let's say they've been around a while, um, and they're funded, so
Okay,
they've got money to spend,
okay,
but they're wasting a lot.
they're
It's
wasting a lot.
clear.
So the question is, where do you start, and how do you prioritize in a situation like that?
Mhm.
It's a great question because it comes up all the time. The answer is all of the above, and so early on in my career, we had a pretty rigid way of working where normally the answer would be, look, the first thing we're going to do is step back, take a breath, and develop a plan. Because really, almost no company has a plan. What I mean by that is they might think they have a plan and they believe they have a plan and they have some sort of plan, but it usually isn't a demand generation plan, which is a very specific thing, right? So it's not a surprise, but creates get get it together, right? The reality, that's a kind of an academic approach. The reality, if you're out in the world, is there are fires that need to be put out right now. And so you really have to attack both things at once. You need to work on the fires and you need to start pulling together all the different facets, the plan, understanding what the dynamic is, looking at what's been done. This is how we would start. We would look at everything that came before. We would learn as much as we possibly can. Big thing we would do is if we still couldn't find the answer, we would probably survey their customers because all answers therein lie. And so, does that make any sense?
Yeah,
Did
I
I
think
answer
so.
the question? More importantly,
I think you're starting to get to it. I would certainly like to add to it.
please. So
So
that's only 2 points for me.
only 2 points, but I think I would echo that being on the right track. I think you've got to look at a way, or how do you do those customer interviews at the same time as fixing the short-term things, because all of the answers long-term are going to come out of the
Right.
customer interview, right? And that's not something that you stop doing. It's not uh, something that you put in a document. It's good for now and forever, and we forget about it.
Right.
So you
Right.
want to create a long-term vision with that keeps you
Right.
involved with the buyer, right?
So
How
for
do you do that?
because I assume we're talking in a scenario where that's sort of the client. I'm the consultant CMO guy, and I've been brought in to solve this problem. Where do I start? Where do we start? Is that right?
Yes.
So it's funny. You're making me think through this, and I'm trying to give you a palatable answer. But here's what the real answer is: if you're spending a whole shitload of money and you don't, and something's broken and you're losing money, stop. Stop spending money, take a step back, start a deliberate and precise planning process. Bring in the sales team, put them at the center of it also. Sales team, we want to hear from them. They're closer to the customer than you are. Executive team, all the stakeholders, get them all together. You mentioned infighting. guess what? If you get everybody together and you work in a collaborative way, in a structured way, all of that goes away, because what you're talking about is like the battle of opinion, right? And so usually there isn't, I can't say usually anymore. A lot of companies do have a lot of data. It's how they're using it or not using it. And so it used to be, the CEO would pound his fist and say, price is the only thing that matters. And, nobody would press them on it because they were afraid of losing their job, except me, because I'm not afraid of losing my job. So I would say, really, Ron, where'd that information come from? Where are you getting that from? Listen, son, I've been working in this business for 27.7 years. Whatever. It was never, well, we did a study last year of 8,000 customers and blah, blah, blah. It was never that. It was always sort of folklore. It was my opinion. So when you've got this in a team dynamic and nobody really has either good data or real data or any data, it is just a battle of opinions. But if you get people together and you start working through, you'll find that they buy into the process, and when you get to the end of it, everybody is together. They're looking at the same information. They're coming to the same conclusions. I don't tell you what the strategy is. It really comes from the data, right? So I'm going to ask you systematically questions about your customer, for example. How do they choose you over this option, right? What are their big hot buttons? How are they prioritized? If you haven't asked your customers, you're assuming, and it's okay to assume, because clients are, they're 95% right. They know their business better than anybody. Except it's that 5% or 2% or 3% that you don't know that bites you in the ass. And so you should be regularly surveying your customers, or just, if things are tight, just talking to your customers, right? If you absolutely can't do that, talk to your salespeople. Get these people aligned. Have a deliberate process. That's really what you need to do. Now, if for some reason stopping would just maybe destroy whatever lead flow that you have, then you set that as a control. And while you're organizing the teams and you're doing the process, it's not difficult to also, for any agency consultant, we can do chew gum and walk at the same time. We'd be looking at the metrics and starting there, and what you're doing, and reviewing what you're sending, and looking at the messaging, and looking at the incentive and the structure of your campaigns, and really troubleshooting as quickly as we can, and then starting to iterate, right? Start iterating, testing a headline, scientific method, watching the KPIs rise. That's all anybody wants.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
That's
The
what they
only thing
want.
I would add to that is, and you hit on it here, but get those KPIs fixed immediately, and get that collaboration with sales immediately. That's your best short-term opportunity, but don't get stuck there, right?
But don't get stuck. Yeah, that's great advice.